Okay, let me open my audio. So we're ready to start in a minute. Thank you everyone for joining me today. Actually, John unfortunately had a last minute issue with his flights in the US, so he's not going to be able to join us. But I'm going to be with you for about 40 minutes and share as much as I can about what we discovered in the last 12 months. Okay, I think we can start. So thank you again. My name is Stefano. As I just said, I was supposed to be here with John, my colleague in the US, but unfortunately John had an issue with his flight, just a quick delay, and so unfortunately he's not going to be able to join us today. What are we talking about today? And let me have someone else joining us. Today we're going to be talking about tech recruiting in 2026. And we decided to organize this webinar mostly because we spent the last 12 months at Anthropos talking to a lot of engineering managers, technical recruiters, talent acquisition leaders, and try to understand exactly what's happening in tech recruiting. Let me move to the next slide because I wanted to give you a bit of context on who I am and also why are we talking specifically about technical skills today. So I'm going to introduce Anthropos slightly better in a few minutes, just explain to you what we do, why are we talking about assessment, why are we talking about hiring. But the reason why we're talking about tech skills specifically today is actually because I spent a big part of my career actually building a previous company called Cloud Academy, where we were actually training people on tech skills. We were assessing them, we were training them for Fortune 500 companies. And we've seen tech skills really going through a journey over the years. I think that today, for all of us that are in recruiting, for everyone that is actually going to, either look for engineers or recruiting engineers or managing engineers, I think there is, a big revolution, which is actually AI, right? And, the idea for today is actually sharing a lot of the things that we've learned over the last 12 months, talking to people that are hiring engineers, that are hiring for technical roles, and that are actually noticing several different things happening. I think that technical roles are really in a unique moment because, of course, on one side, you have candidates that are actually using AI to apply. They're using AI to do things in their assessments. But at the same time, the same role of a technical person, of an engineer inside any organization is actually changing, right? Because of AI. So I think, it's a unique spot for us, and I'm really excited about, sharing some of the things that kept popping up in all our conversation. How did we get to this point? So Anthropos, and specifically Anthropos Hiring, is a solution that we started building a couple of years ago, and our company specializes in testing soft and technical skills in what we call AI simulations. AI simulations are real-life scenarios where we can actually bring a candidate into really a scenario where they have to work with other people, they have to collaborate with stakeholders, they have to talk to colleagues, and they also need to solve technical challenges. And we designed all of that to make sure that we solve some of the issues that we've been hearing about from talent acquisition directors, from tech recruiters, and honestly, sometimes also for candidates. So in 2025, we decided to accelerate on Anthropos Hiring. We wanted to really understand how to build a product that was slightly different from what was available in the market. So from things like HackerRank or from other tools that are available today. And so John and I in particular spent a ton of time sitting down with people, particularly in the US, but honestly, we talked to a lot of people also in EMEA and asking them, what are your challenges? What are you noticing in this space that is changing? And also, what are your biggest struggles today when you need to hire technical people or where you need to, screen technical roles? So in each single discussion, of course, we're talking to them about Anthropos, we're demoing Anthropos, but we decided to spend the first 10, 20 minutes really having an open conversation and saying like, what are your challenges today? Of course, we asked for this meeting. You were so kind to give us your time. Can you walk us through your biggest struggle? And so that's how we've learned a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today. And of course, this webinar is going to be just about 40 minutes. And we decided to talk about, 4 specific things that kept coming up in each single conversation. Kind of the summary for me after, spending 12 months talking to people and building the product on the other side, really refining our solution to make sure that we were solving for these challenges, was that on one side, AI is slowly transforming the way HR operates. I think, if you're on LinkedIn, you can see these every single day. But, there are so many companies and so many people that are talking about HR becoming a lot more important inside organizations. And at the same time, HR being transformed in the way they operate by AI, right? So that's, something that we all know. And I think you guys know because I assume you work in this space. On the other side, I think that the most interesting thing for me is actually that the role itself, like, the software engineer, the DevOps engineer, everyone that is actually operating with tech skills, and I'm an engineer myself, it's actually going through a revolution where we build more things with AI. We actually design a lot of things starting with AI first, with Cloud Code, with Cursor, with all these tools. And so even the role itself, what recruiters and what companies are looking for is somehow changing. And that's a big revolution because on one side you have a role that is changing, and on the other side, the industries and the companies need to adapt to something that is not going to be the same anymore. So today we're going to talk about 4 different things that we kept hearing, and I'm going to go in a bit of details. I cannot share the name of the companies, of course, but I'll try to be as detailed as possible. And at the same time, probably using the last 20 minutes, I'm going to show you how we kept iterating on Anthropos hiring to incorporate some of these challenges and find the solutions to them with AI simulations. Of course, feel free to drop questions in the chat at any point in time. This meeting is going to be recorded, so we're going to share with you the recording after the webinar. And at the same time, I'm going to share with you the slides, and I'm available to share more information or data if you're interested into them. Okay, so this is probably the thing that everybody has been mentioning to us as point 1 or point 2 when we're asking for things. They were like, okay, in 2021 or 2020, we couldn't really find these positions, specifically software engineers, specifically front-end engineers. I think it was something that was coming up a lot. Today we have somehow the opposite problem. So the number of applications keeps growing, right? And of course, we try to understand a bit more about this phenomenon. And it's really clear that on one side you have people that are using AI to apply to a lot of these positions. And on the other side, of course, you have companies using AI tools to really protect themselves, right? So if you think about the ATS, for example, the application tracking system, it's pretty standard today that everybody is using filters. Some of them are already using AI algorithms to filter out applications. And so people on the other side are simply using more and more tools that are so many Chrome extensions that actually allows you to apply to multiple jobs. And the result of this is actually that a lot of tech recruiters are actually, drowning inside applications, right? There are 2 consequences that they were mentioning when we were talking to them. The first one is there is a lot of noise, right? Sometimes they have hiring managers that are pushing them to get better candidates, more qualified candidates. And they were saying like it's really becoming difficult to understand, who's going to be a good candidate on paper because their CV, their resume has been really tuned with AI. They have put references that sound a lot, better or bigger than what they are. And so that, makes their job really noisy. And on the other side, of course, the number of people that apply is so big that the amount of time that they have to spend on each single one keeps going low, right? So it's like, 7 seconds that, what we found in data, just, comparing what we were hearing from them. That's probably something that we've seen, not just in tech recruiting, to be honest with you. That's something that have been mentioned to us by multiple recruiters. And I think, that's probably one of the problems. I think, everybody is looking at this and, is mentioning this as among the first things, but it's probably not the biggest problem, in my opinion. And The reason why we think this is not probably, the main issue is actually because we are in a market that is actually changing. So we had a lot of layoffs, we had a lot of, changes. And so there are more people looking for a role. Historically, that was not something that was affecting tech roles. This is actually something that is happening now. So it is affecting those tech roles. I think that AI, of course, gave people a lot of tools to improve the way they're searching for a job, apply for more jobs, really tuning their CVs. And so this is kind of a natural effect, right? Even though on the other side, companies are building their defense. I think that the biggest issue with this one is not even the number of roles, it's actually the fact that screening tech roles is usually pretty expensive. So in some conversations, I'm thinking of a couple of conversations in particular, you could tell that these technical recruiters were actually stressed by the amount of time that they spent reviewing and screening some of these people, and they ended up discovering a few weeks later that they didn't really have the skills that they were supposed to have, right? And that was happening, of course, at interview number 3, interview number 4. That was really the big cost of this. So that's something that I think it's kind of the thing that everybody is mentioning. More interesting though, and this was actually something that we wanted to understand even better in our case, is like, okay, what happens next? If these people are actually using AI to apply to these jobs, what happens next? And I think that the biggest issue, and honestly, it's not something that someone has solved at 100%, is them using AI to cheat in assessments, right? So of course, they cheat on resume, and I think that's something that we're going to see more and more, as we said. But cheating in assessment is actually something new that has been enabled since probably 2023 with ChatGPT, and you have more and more people that are actually completing online assessments using ChatGPT, using Cloud Code, using anything else that is basically a solution that they didn't have before. And if you've been in this space, I guess that a lot of you do have a lot of experience in the space. You know that there are a lot of companies that over the years have been working on proctoring. They've been working on making sure that you cannot copy and paste things into the coding editor of your assessments. But of course, AI is bringing things to a different scale. And of course, is also changing the way we all need to recruit people. We all need to look at the assessment. It was interesting because, we've been talking to a few people that were giving homework assignments to these candidates. And of course, that is completely invalid today because, that's something that most people are going to complete with ChatGPT. Most people are going to complete with Cloud Code. And that's something where they then need to spend a ton of time reviewing it. They need to spend a ton of time understanding exactly what has been, kind of the reasoning, kind of the problem thinking behind that. So I think, this is probably one of the biggest issues that we've seen today. And in some cases, to be honest with you, we've seen this more in the US than in Europe. We've also had people mentioning deepfakes. So we have also had people mentioning cases where they had someone completing an assessment and someone else showing up to the interview, right? And they didn't catch that in some cases. So I think, that's probably something that we need to keep looking at. And that's probably one of the biggest issues that we have today when it comes down to hiring technical roles. I think that, once we were discussing this problem with some of these people, we were like, what are you guys doing about this? And so something that a few people mentioned was like, doing training sessions where they, for their tech recruiting team and recruiting team, making sure that they knew how to verify specific things, especially to make sure that the people completing the assessments were exactly the people then showing up to the following interviews. But we also had a lot of people somehow mentioning something like, okay, we understood that probably the technical challenge is not what we need to focus anymore. What we need to focus on is really asking these people how they think. Is really asking these people to walk us through their solution and try to understand how they implemented things. So I think, this was, particularly helpful for us because it showed us that tech recruiters are already thinking about, changing the process, what's next with this. But on the other side, I think it was particularly important for us because it showed us that they're really looking at new solutions. They're really looking at things that are like slightly different. It might be software, it might be a different process. In some cases, they also mentioned doing some training with their engineering teams and saying like, okay, how do we actually ask them things related to the code, whatever they did to build that code, that can allow us to understand if they understood it, right? So there is a lot of discussion around this point, because I think that's probably the one where companies are actually losing more money, right? You don't want to get someone that got into the role cheating, and you don't want to get someone into the role that doesn't actually have those skills. This is another one that I personally experienced myself. And I think it's probably, one that it's not that easy to solve, right? Because at the end of the day, this is more about change management. This is more about, connecting two teams inside the organization that really need to work side by side, HR and the engineering team. So if you've been in tech recruiting, you know that one of the biggest challenges that a tech recruiter has is usually selecting people. So finding those candidates, selecting them, screening them, and then making sure that she has someone on the tech team to screen them, to talk to them, to make sure that she has feedback and she can move fast with that application. Now, I think that has always been a challenge. I think I've seen that challenge multiple times at my previous organization, in this organization now, and I've never seen an easy solution. Meaning, like, you usually have top talents that are in the market for not many days. Our research shows that they're usually in 10 days where someone is going to be available, and at the same time you spend more than a month hiring tech roles, right? And what it happens usually is like you have an amazing candidate, but you have to schedule the interview 2 weeks later with the tech team, and of course someone else is going to be faster than you. I think that this is a disconnection that is difficult to solve for a couple of reasons. A, because organizations, of course, are always busy. Engineers are usually building the product. They're usually doing a lot of other things. And at the same time, HR wants to be more independent, right? Sometimes I've seen this becoming an issue inside some organization where, we have tension between these two teams. And in other times, I've seen, really directors or VPs coming together and really rethink the way they were working together. But that's, rare in my opinion. This was one of the conversations that, we had where people were like, we know that we could go faster. We know that actually there is the intention from top leadership to move faster. But at the same time, we don't have enough engineers, or we don't have alignment between HR and engineering to move faster. I think this is, one of those things that we try to optimize for, because I ultimately think that recruiters and RE managers need to be strongly aligned. They need to spend more time together, but at the same time, both of them need to have kind of a framework, kind of a process as well, where they can quickly test people. They can quickly understand if those candidates have the right technical skills or soft skills. We're going to talk about that in a second, and then move to the next step. If today you're basically reviewing people, just having the first conversation with them, and then waiting 10 days or even waiting 5 days to do a pre-screening interview, a technical pre-screening interview, I think that's simply too long. And of course, if you think about the previous problem, having a lot of candidates, that's not going to help, because you have a lot of signals, you have a lot of noise, but at the same time, you're not going to be able to test them quickly enough to move to the next steps. So that was, one of the issues that we have seen where, honestly, we didn't have immediately a strong solution. And it felt like something that a lot of tech recruiters felt like, okay, it's always been like this. This is actually just, getting worse now. Now, one last point on this, I think that talking to them and asking them how they were managing these situations, a lot of them said, well, ultimately, sometimes we fail, we lose these candidates because, we are not able to go back to them with feedback. And I think, that's something that happens to all of us. You screen someone, you spend a ton of time talking to that candidate, and then of course, the HR team itself cannot share feedback because they are not getting feedback back, right? Or because they're not technical enough to understand that feedback or to go into the details. And so I think, that's one of the things that is also causing candidates to lose trust in some of these processes. And it becomes, a lot more complex than what it is. The last part is probably the one that we all can see more than anything else, in my opinion. And going back to my opening, I think that the way we are assessing technical roles needs to change, mostly because, those roles are changing. So let's think about, 5 years ago, you were looking for a front-end engineer, you were looking for a back-end engineer. Usually HR would have had an initial conversation. They were asking for the usual numbers, like how many years of experience do you have? Do you have experience with these technologies? Are you working in these specific industries? Do you have this knowledge about this framework, and so on and so forth? And then that candidate was going to a coding test or multiple coding tests that were actually trying to understand how it was, able to build code. Today, I think, this part is somehow getting old, and, it's somehow getting somehow not needed anymore, because a lot of these candidates will end up using AI in the organization. That doesn't mean that they don't need to understand how to build things, but it means that the way they're going to be working is going to be completely different. And soft skills, to some extent, are going to be a lot more important than technical skills. The reason is pretty simple. If you think about the way companies are going to be building code, that's going to be a lot more about, understanding requirements, talking to their customers, talking to internal stakeholders, and actually fully understanding the business requirements. So in this scenario, it's going to be really, really difficult to say, okay, this person knows how to code in Python, this person knows how to code in Java, and that's going to be enough. You're going to need to test for a lot of skills that are actually soft skills, but I would say they are more like, a mix of problem-solving skills, communication, and relationship skills, right? So even if you look at data, you have 89% of soft skills and attitude skills that represent the reason why hires failed. And only 11% are technical competency skills that brought, that person to fail. That means that even today, you can see, and even, now, 12 months ago, you can see that this is changing. And I think that in 2026, this is gonna go to a point where, to some extent, I expect, candidates not to care about technical skills that much anymore, and really focus on explaining, how they work, how they think about building product, how they think about, implementing things, and how they go about, solving issues that are a mix of business and technical competencies. So I think that is probably, something that we've seen in multiple organizations. Some recruiters were more aware than others. Some recruiters, came back to us saying like, okay, it's going to be difficult though for us to test soft skills together with technical skills. And still, I think, that's probably the biggest challenge. You need to move from a world where we were testing these people in multiple steps. We were testing first and foremost their soft skills, maybe with a quick conversation with HR, and then we're getting into a lot of technical analysis and a lot of technical challenges. I think, those two things are going to need to be done together, and they're going to be looking at things like, okay, maybe this person is not the strongest when it comes down to technical skills, but we know that this person using AI and using an LLM is going to be able to go to the next step. And it's still going to be the best choice for us because he has soft skills. He has a way of talking to customers. He has a way of talking to internal stakeholders that we haven't seen with other people. Or even better, I think that, one of the challenges that everybody has seen is actually working with engineers that don't know how to communicate their problems, don't know how to communicate their solutions sometimes. And that's really something that becomes an obstacle to sales. It becomes an obstacle to marketing. It becomes an obstacle to a lot of other stakeholders inside the organization. If I think about my experience, we had brilliant engineers that really couldn't grow and couldn't go to the next step, sometimes into management, sometimes into leadership, but sometimes even just, spending more time in front of customers because they were lacking soft skills, even if they were absolutely amazing from a technical perspective. And so I think that, there are two ways of looking at this. The first one is put aside Anthropos, put aside, adopting something that helps you doing this. I think you need to rethink your process to look at something that allows you to look at soft skills and technical skills together. And ideally, you have something that is not too long, that it doesn't require, 2 interviews or 3 interviews. But at the same time, I also think you need to go to the other stakeholders and say, what are the things that matter the most for you today while we work with an engineer? If you look at, the best people you have in the technical team that you interact with, what are the common things that you notice about that? And I think, that collecting all these things is going to be absolutely important for you to redesign that process, redesign the way you screen people for technical roles. These points, to be honest with you, did come up in buckets. I think, for example, I took one of the tasks that we had from a VP of engineering, and this person was saying hey, we see this pretty clearly when they interact with our customers, when they interact with our solutions engineers. It's pretty clear that they collaborate, they know how to explain things, they know how to go and solve things before they become a problem for that other colleague. And of course, that's something that is super difficult to test during the initial phases of an interview, right? So I think that explained that better than everything else. The other thing that we noticed with this one is actually that this is more visible in large organizations. So I think that whenever we're talking to companies that were 200 people, 300 people, 400 people, they were still highly looking for technical skills first. When we're talking to large organizations, they understood the complexity of their teams, they understood the complexity of their companies and their scale. And of course, they were looking more at this problem. They were okay, we know that soft skills are becoming actually a lot more important, and that's what we're trying to go to. So these are the 4 big things that we've seen. There is a lot of data that I didn't want to cover specifically in all these slides because you guys can read them, because I know that all of them are public information, but some of them are actually pretty interesting. While building this webinar, we've gone through a lot of different reports, we've gone through a lot of different interviews, and besides using our knowledge from our interviews, from our work in 2025, we wanted to back all of this with data that is actually proving that this is happening. And so you can find all of that. I'm happy to share a few of these reports as well, because we've done a lot of research to prepare the slides. Let me move to the next step. Of course, I want to give you a demo of Anthropos, and I wanted to explain to you how we've been working on building something that solves part of these problems. I think, the main one for us is actually combining tech skills and soft skills. And we've been doing this starting from the idea of building simulations. A simulation for us is an assessment that mimics a real scenario. So an example of a real scenario could be a colleague in product, and as an engineer, I need to call him. I need to understand exactly what he's trying to build, what he needs, what the customer has been telling them, and then I need to go and build that thing, right? And of course, that combination allows us to validate how that person goes about, soft skills, how they work with communications, how they work with someone else, what kind of questions they ask, how curious they are. And at the same time, of course, we need to verify their technical skills in the same simulation, in the same scenario. So we basically spent 2025 incorporating a lot of these things and going, point by point, saying how do we solve this? How do we solve that? And, the result has been building a version of our AI simulation that is actually specific to coding and specific to test soft skills. I'm going to jump in the demo in a second because I know you guys are probably done with slides. But one thing that we wanted to incorporate into this is also personalization, because one of the things that is constant is people not wanting to get more assessments, not wanting to get, more tests online unless they can learn something. So unless, that's something that talks specifically about that role, talks specifically about, what they're going to be doing with that job, and also unless, they get feedback. So if they get immediate feedback at the end of it, of course, that's also going to be a reason for them to trust that company, to trust that recruitment process, because of course, it tells them exactly how they did it. It tells them exactly where, they did something wrong. And most importantly, it tells them like, hey, this is probably going to go to the next level, or you failed the test, or, there is a mismatch between the position and your knowledge, and this is not going to go further, right? So customization is one of our core principle building products. I don't know if there are any questions. Let me look at the chat. No, feel free to leave questions there. I'm going to quickly move to the Anthropos platform. And we don't have a lot of time. We probably have about 10 minutes. So what I'm going to show you is how you complete a simulation. And then I'm going to show you the results, and ideally, how you can personalize that simulation, or how you can build a new one. So we built simple simulation, just an example. As you can see, this simulation is 45 minutes, is available in multiple languages, and each single simulation we build can verify up to 5 skills. And we're talking about technical skills and soft skills. There is an initial video, and I'm going to play this quickly because it's only 30 seconds, that explain to the person what they're going to be doing in this scenario.
Python software engineer intern AI simulation.
You are a software engineer at Acme Inc., a research-driven II cloud infrastructure provider. You must solve a coding problem that will demonstrate your technical knowledge and communication skills. The solution must meet strict standards for efficiency, maintainability, and production readiness. Your goal is to implement the algorithm and defend your approach in a technical review. Let's get started. Good luck.
There's a quick video that explains to me what I'm going to be supposed to do. Then you can try simulation demo, of course, or you can start the simulation right here. As I said, we do have anti-cheating solutions inside the simulation. So in this case, I'm not recording myself and I'm not recording my screen, but that's something that we do. I'll show you later. But on top of this, we do have anti-cheating technology that is going to look at what I do while I'm doing the simulation. So if I copy and paste things, if I go to other browser tabs, if I do a bunch of things, that's going to be an indication that I might be cheating. And of course, there is on top of it the video to prove that. There is a quick setup.
Hi there, I'm your test.
And this is actually because I will need to talk inside this simulation, because of course, the end game is making sure that I can interact with people. Okay. Quick connection quality, very good. And then we enter the simulation. So as we enter the simulation, you will see that a simulation is something that we can personalize. I can go back and I can look at the scenario. All of these could be something related to another company, to your company. And then you have multiple steps inside the simulations that you need to complete. The first one is actually a coding step. So this is, of course, coding simulation. So I'm given an algorithm that I need to build. There is a quick explanation, and I need to go and implement this algorithm. The second step, though, is calling Laura, who is an engineering manager, and really explain what I've done and ask a few questions or answer a few questions. And that's just an example of how you can really look at how someone is going to solve something from a technical perspective, and then get into the technicals, and then get into the soft side, or the communication side of that. So I'm going to go to the code editor. Of course, just for simplicity, I'm going to copy and paste the solution here, just to show you that it works and that it's going to look at me. Of course, I pasted things from the from another source, and I'm going to be cheating here. And then I can run code, right? That's something simple. It's something super useful for the candidates. They can understand exactly how their code is running. There are a few more things that probably I'm supposed to do here, like adding comments and solving a few more things, but this is good enough for now. So once I go back, I can complete this task, and then that's the interesting part. I'm gonna need to call Laura live, and she's gonna ask me why I implemented this solution, to walk her through, all the most important things. And she's really gonna try to understand how I think, right? So let me try quickly.
Hello, who is speaking?
Hey, Laura, this is Stefano. How are you doing?
Hi, Stephanie. Let's dive in. Give me a concise, high-level walkthrough of your gas station solution.
Sure. So what I was trying to do was actually understanding the algorithm, the basic algorithm behind this. And I know it's a famous one. So I was thinking like, okay, if I need to visit all these gas stations and I need to constantly track the gas that I have available, how can I optimize for that? Is that what you want me to describe, or do you want me to go into the details?
Let's keep it high-level first. How does your solution determine the correct starting station in one pass?
Okay, I'm gonna stop it here. A, because it's gonna become a bit more technical, but B, because this specific agent is being programmed to go step by step. So she's gonna ask me a few things to understand my thinking. She's gonna ask me a few things to understand how I explain something that is very technical in simple terms. And of course, if I try to not do these things, she's gonna try to dive deep and ask me for more things. The best part, honestly, is that when you complete something like this, and we could have multiple tasks and any different type of question or a type of challenge here, or multiple people as well. I'm going to show you that later. Then you complete the simulation, and our system is going to analyze everything that I've done plus everything that I've said against these skills. And of course, we have a mix of technical skills, software development fundamentals, code quality, but also technical communication. And the way we measure these skills is with a validation technology that has a rubric score, and that doesn't really use AI to validate things, because of course, that wouldn't be trustable and wouldn't be reliable, but it actually builds a lot of different checks to make sure that we can truly evaluate a candidate the same way after 10 simulations, 20 simulations, or 1,000 simulations, right? And the beauty about this is actually that you can actually share all of these with the candidate. This is something where you can prove to them that they didn't complete a single part, or they were not able to explain a specific thing, and that's completely unbiased. So one of the issues that sometimes candidates bring to the table is, I've been talking to people that don't really know the technical aspects, and of course, they didn't bring me forward. And at the same time, sometimes, as we were saying, they are like, okay, I've been talking to people, they didn't really give me proper feedback, and the only thing that I knew was actually that I was not a fit, right? This way, this is completely up to you. You can actually decide if you want to give people the chance to see their results or not. In this case, I barely passed the simulation. And the reason why I've done that is actually because, I cheated at the end of the day. So it's going to detect all of that. And at the same time, as you can see, I completed the code quality pretty well, but I completely failed the technical communication. So at the end of the day, I'm 5 out of 5 in code quality. I'm 5 out of 5 on software development fundamentals. I'm 1 out of 5 here. And if you look at this, it's actually something that you can only see as a manager. It's going to explain to you why this has happened, right? So that's going to be something where you see exactly all the checks that we've been running on this. Now, you can see this also with criteria, because you can personalize all the criteria, and you can look at the entire list of things that I proved or didn't prove. Now, as a manager, if you go to a previous attempt that I completed, you can see a lot more. So in this case, as you can see, I got 60 out of 100. I previously completed this today, and if you go into the results, let me move my screen here, you're going to see that I actually cheated, right? So that's something that, of course, we don't stop the candidate, but we highlight the fact that, candidates have been cheating. I can look at my screen, so I can go back and really understand what I was doing and where I cheated.
Who is
But I
speaking?
can also listen Hey, Laura, and this is look
Stefano.
at the
How are you
person
doing?
that was completing this, right?
Hey, Stefano. Doing station solution.
So this allows you to really understand, what are the top candidates, because all of them are going to be listed here by their potential. And you can also look at their skills, right? So this is really, really good to do a couple of things, to really have a better idea of their skills, of their potential, and to really understand if they can, build things, if they can code, but at the same time, can they talk to someone? Can they work with someone? And that's really the important part. I know we're running late, so I'm going to show you just, the last part, which is how you can actually build simulations for your company. You have a library of assessments that we provide, but at the end of the day, you can build as many simulations as you like simply using Studio, which is our tool to build simulations, to customize simulations. And it's super simple. You can start from a template where you can run with your job description, and then you can simply personalize everything. So you have Studio Copilot, and you can quickly talk to the simulation to add more things. So like, for example, in this case, I need to test the ability of this engineer to work with sales. You put what's called a salesperson and test his communication skills. So I can do something pretty easy like this, and it's gonna add a test, as you can see, customer-facing updates with sales. And of course, it created another character inside a simulation that is gonna be able to do that. Or I could also simply create a task here, a voice task or a chat task, where I'm gonna ask this person questions, and I'm gonna validate the way it's gonna be answering those using skills. And that's particularly important because, you can also personalize the evaluation methodology. So in this part, you can decide which skills you want to measure. And at the same time, you can define all the criteria. So if you say like communication, that's how I want to validate the skill for this person, or something like sales, I want to validate how it talks to salespeople. In this case, for example, let me show you. I'm going to add a technical skills like product management. And then I'm going to add something like communication. And of course, we have 60,000 skills, plus you can add your own skills. So there are a lot of different things that you can measure. I could also add something very technical. Let's assume that this was about Python. I'm going to be able to measure Python. And always using Studio Copilot or simply modifying all these criteria, you can define exactly how the simulation is going to validate the results. And as you can see, it can validate, let me show you the things that it's going to validate. It's going to validate all the conversations, and it's also going to validate all the technical assets that are going to be built if the person needs to solve a coding challenge. Then you can simply create your simulation, and you're ready to go. You can test it, you can run with it, you can then assign it to people and decide to scale with that. I think we are a few minutes late. Let me see if there are questions. Just one. Is it possible to build the simulations from a document? For example, could I upload details about my services or products and create a simulation based on that? Yes, absolutely. Just going back quickly to my screen, you can do that in two ways. So you can start building the simulation right up front, adding a document, or once you're inside a simulation, you might want to personalize the simulation with specific things, and you can add that custom knowledge. So the simulation automatically is going to add all that knowledge that you need inside it. Okay. I don't think we have other questions. I know we're late, so I definitely want to let you guys go. Thanks so much for staying with me today. We're going to share the recording. We're going to share a bit more data and the slides as well. Feel free to reach out to us if there is anything that we can help with. And thank you again for joining us. And thank you for joining me. Unfortunately, John was not here today, but we're going to follow up, the two of us. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.